When it comes to building in Minecraft, I find it can really help to think about the smaller details early. They can influence the larger aspects of your build and really bring your structure to life. Now, I'm not claiming to have cracked the code to create the most beautiful builds in Minecraft. In fact, I'm still learning myself, but I've gathered up my notes and worked out 10 of the most unique building and detailing tips and tricks that should help you bring your builds to the next level. This is sort of all-encompassing, but if you're texturing a build, an important tip is to think about every block as a color rather than a material. For example, here at my base on the EchoCraft server, I used pumpkins on a yellow wall as a sign of weathering and some leaking coming from those air conditioning units. Another example of this is the kelp as a dark green wall, or these different ores to smooth out the transition from shadow to light. The main thing with this one is don't be bound by what the block does and focus instead on its color, as if the block was a paint that you were dabbing your brush into. This one I'm going to do with you because I'm still learning it too. Something that makes Minecraft builds pop and come to life is movement, and some examples of this are copper golems by making them infinitely loop in a system like this, or adding a flickering light inside a window, having water flow through or near your build, simply having smoke actively coming out of your chimney, or having animals like these bees in the environment nearby. These are things that I've been trying to implement into my own builds recently, and it has been really fun and, in my opinion, very beneficial. Levers work perfectly for this because they're sort of a diagonal half block that you can use to create a sturdy and supported look to the roof. The lever can also work really well with lightning rods, and one of the blocks I use most often are these fence gates that can work perfectly as a convincing support too. As to why I try to implement these into almost every build I make is because it's realistic. While some buildings may not have brackets like these in the real world, when you bring it into Minecraft, it adds interest, and that is what we want. This is something I've been loving recently. With my Hobbit home here that is built from my concept to construction series, I have a great example of how strong and influential shading can be. You may be thinking that this is not a unique tip, but when I say shading, I don't mean a gradient from the top down. I mean like real heavy contrast. Because in real life, shadows rarely taper off, they end abruptly. How I usually do this is by picking a spot that the light is coming from and shading anything I can't see from that spot, under roofs or windows, behind rocks, wherever it makes sense. I have so much more to say about texturing, shading, and gradients, but I think that deserves its own video. If you use transparent or non-full blocks, you can create cleaner transitions and unique details by layering a block behind wisely. For instance, back here on EchoCraft, I have these vines that I really wanted to extend over this way a bit more, and rather than replacing the ladder entirely with vines, I put moss behind it to keep that green effect going across. Another time that I've used this trick is here in my single player world. If you have a look at this stained glass window, you'll notice that it is not glass at all. Instead, I use this layering trick to form a more realistic version of stained glass windows than what is possible with a single block depth. Depth brings me to another point. The window is made with trapdoors over the top of colored glazed terracotta, where the color just seeps through in some spaces, which forms a detailed 3D window that is accurate to how stained glass actually looks in the real world and looks better than the blocky colored glass. I recently have been playing with Vanilla Tweak's Bushy Leaves that adds this 3D bushiness to the leaves, but if you want a more vanilla-esque Bushy Leaves like I did when I built this for my concept to construction series, you can put moss in with the leaves and place bushes or grass on top and glowberries underneath, shearing them slightly hanging to create a more realistic and bushier effect for your leaves. And this also works in trees too. Glow lichen is an awesome block, and again on EchoCraft, you can see how I created a glowing effect in my windows by putting lichen near them. To exaggerate this effect further for the build, I placed the lichen at the bottom of the window and then shaded the glass from light at the bottom to dark at the top. This is a very powerful tool for your builds, if they're in a dark space or if you see them at night. I have a couple different railing designs that I have different use cases for. If you have a rundown build, signs and trapdoors like this using pressure plates or buttons to keep the signs up can create a very rickety look, great for old or abandoned structures. A more pristine railing can be achieved with shelf blocks like I've done here on this castle build. A bonus with this one is you can have more space for less. Probably my favorite railing style is hanging signs like this, or having them sideways with trapdoors on top. If you have a build that has adjacent walls that are different colors, like the incredibly ugly example I threw together here, and you don't want this ugly block edge, that can be really difficult to pull off in Minecraft. But what I've learned is that you can use trapdoors, or you can replace those trapdoors with shelves. And if you need a specific color, you can use banners to create a nearly seamless transition. And the only thing with banners is that if you run away a little bit, the block entity view distance is only 64 blocks. So when you're out of range, it will go away. Okay, I won't lie, this one is not mine in any way, shape or form, but I love it nonetheless, and I thought it was too good to leave out even though it's not my trick. Although I'm not sure whether he came up with it himself or where he found it, VIII-100 recently began implementing a trick where you use leaf blocks in the ground to imply fallen leaves or clover fields. I used a similar technique back here on my single player world at my dye store with these flowers that have fallen down from up there and created a leaf pile. Another way B-dubs used this was in combination with some flowers to create a unique flower patch. And clearly this is a well-rounded trick, because a third way to use this is to create sort of clover fields from up close, or texturing and shading from afar. So that's it. If you made it this far through and you liked any of the tips, please consider leaving a like and commenting your favorite trick, because it means the world. And if you liked the builds throughout the video, consider subscribing and checking me out on my single player world Speck's Empire or the EchoCraft SMP. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.